the CDG BizCast. I'm your host, Christian Gonzalez, co-owner of Creativity Design Group, a digital marketing firm in Houston, Texas. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Many people have become complacent with working full-time for someone else, even when their working conditions are the absolute worst. Too many people are afraid to take that big step towards their dreams due to complacency and never get to become the business owners they have been dreaming to become. None of these things apply to today's guest. Today, we speak to a fantastic entrepreneur who has dealt with it all. Unrewarding jobs, toxic bosses, criticism from peers, you name it. Despite all of that, she came out on top and became an extremely successful CEO of her own firm. Please welcome the founder and CEO of Junction Creative Solutions and author of her upcoming book, Dare to Become, Julie Cropp Gareleck. Welcome to BizCast, Julie. It's a pleasure to have you on today's episode.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it certainly is an honor to have such a resilient person like yourself on our show today. We have a lot of things that we're going to cover. Now, we all know that the journey into entrepreneurship is not an easy one, and it's easier said than done for the most part. A lot of people think they can do it, but then they don't take into account all the steps that come up into building a business. I always tell people you can be really good at what you do, but when it comes to taking your talent and turning it into a business, then that's when problems start to arise, because these people who have this mindset don't know anything about running a business. They don't know the steps of how to run a business, maintain a business, control the little everyday tasks of running a business. There's a lot involved in just going out there and selling your talent. There's a lot of steps involved towards building a business, towards running one, towards trying to get one started, such as business plan writing, getting a bank account, writing a marketing plan, things like that. For example, if somebody is good at making pizzas, they may want to start a pizza shop, and that's great. For this example, for this talented pizza maker, what if he or she does not know anything about running a pizza shop? Then that's where the trouble's going to start. So you could see the importance of ensuring that you know the ins and outs of running a business before you start one. You can't just jump in thinking you can monetize your talents just by opening up a storefront. And that leads me into my first question. Please tell us how your journey as an entrepreneur began. How did your parents play such a vital role that paved the way for your success today?
Yeah, I mean, my parents played a pivotal role in my career path, and ultimately my success. You know, when I was 16, my parents, who had worked for corporate America for 20 years, my father had worked for a corporation for 20 years, my mother worked for the bank. And, you know, he had reached a point where he was traveling, 4 days a week. He was on the road. We never saw him. And, they had invested in real estate over the years. They would, buy a house, fix it up and sell it. But, when I was 16, he sat my sister and I down and said, "Hey, do you want the good news or the bad news?" And so we, of course, said, "Well, let's start with the bad news first." And he said, "Well, hey, I quit my job. And the good news is I bought the Avenue Restaurant, which was a 110-seat family-style restaurant in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And from that moment forward, it really did become a family endeavor. My sister and I worked hand in hand with my mom and dad as they took over the restaurant and grew the restaurant year over year. And so, by default, at such an early age, I was able to see what it was like to run a business. I will say that my 16-year-old self wasn't so happy that I was working all the time. But what I will say is that experience, having worked for them and watching them build and grow this business, really gave me a lot of fundamental skill sets that as I entered the workforce after college, it really set me up to be further ahead than maybe someone else that had come out, my age had come out of college. I had managed people. I, was responsible and accountable for specific things within the business. I helped manage the business for a period of time. And so sort of coming out of college and going into the workforce, I really felt like I was better prepared and had a lot of experience working with different types of people when I did enter the workforce.
Yes, it's good that you're able to get such an early start on knowing how to run a business thanks to your parents buying the Avenue Restaurant. That must have been a great experience. Not everybody gets to have that experience so early in life. I mean, I know that you weren't exactly too pleased having to work all the time. There's always a good and a bad side to everything. Yes, working did cut into your personal life, but at the same time, you were able to learn the ins and outs of what it means to run a restaurant. You were able to see all the operational tasks that most people on the front end don't get to see, all the behind the scenes work that takes to run a business. As a customer, we don't get to see those things, but when we run the business or we work for somebody who is a very strong business owner and they're always making sure that things are getting done or ensuring that the business is running like a well-oiled machine, you get to see those things. I was able to relate to you when you talked about how you were working actively and you found at some points working as a waitress just became downright grueling. I went to an Art Institute school in Houston, and I went for web design and interactive multimedia, got a bachelor's degree there. When I got out, my first job that I had was somewhat related to graphic design. It also involved a lot more than that, technically I shouldn't have been doing. I was basically doing a lot of printing. I worked at a promotional products company doing production on paper wristbands and other promotional items like tote bags and things like that. And it was actually quite a grueling job. The company was operating out of a building that used to be a Walmart many years ago, so pretty decently sized facility. I worked in a few different departments, but even though there was a graphic design aspect of it, of having to prepare the artworks on screen, the artworks people send in so we could prepare them to be printed onto the product, whichever one they were ordering, the more grueling aspect of this job was having to move boxes around and having to deal with the incoming stock, because that was also part of what I did too. And I also had a nasty boss who was extremely hot-headed working there, but I'll talk more about that later. But that's how I was able to relate, because I was tired of the toxic work environment and the fact that this job did not directly relate to what I majored in college. It was also a minimum wage job, mind you. I began putting out resumes like crazy. I wanted to get out of this job, just like how you were ready to move on from waitressing. I was ready to move on out of this job. It was getting old. One can only take so much of a toxic work environment. When you have a toxic boss on top of the strenuous workload, it just makes it even worse. Like, there's just nothing enjoyable about the job at all.
Yeah.
That was only one job that I had after I left college. I did have another one later, which I'll discuss later. But my next question for you is, after the Avenue was nothing more than a closed chapter of your life, you went through several jobs, some of them good, some of them were bad, some of them had downright nightmarish experiences, as I saw in your book. You were eventually able to escape from all that and start your own company. Please introduce to our listeners Junction Creative Solutions and how it aims to bring success to each client.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was very fortunate when I started my career, as you mentioned, to work my way up, throughout the organizations that I worked for. And I had reached a point where, I really was at a place where I wanted to provide value and add value to clients on my own. And so I founded Junction Creative. We were founded truly as a hybrid between what you would find, at a business consulting firm with what you would find at an advertising agency. So we were working with clients on business strategy and then helping them tie, whether it was a branding program or a marketing strategy, to help meet their business goals and objectives. And, after having worked for some other agencies at the time, what I really identified were some sort of gaps where, from strategy to creative, it oftentimes didn't end up translating into business results. And so I really felt compelled to create an agency that was responsible, accountable, and that was really focused on our clients' business goals, not just their goals with having a really well-designed website or a well-designed brand, but rather what were they trying to accomplish with their business? What were their revenue goals? And then how are we going to be able to leverage marketing and branding to be able to directly impact their bottom line? And so I started Junction Creative over 15 years ago. We'll celebrate in 2025 as our 16th anniversary. So it definitely feels like it's gone by super quickly. But I really just, wanted an organization that had an environment that I had looked for a number of years. And so I wanted to create a safe environment where employees could learn from each other and also contribute directly to the success of our clients.
And that's exactly what every business should aim to do, contribute to the success of their clients. After I left the promotional products company, I worked for a small firm that specialized in different services. They were more greed-driven than they were focused on client success. And just like you, I decided I wanted to break free from that so I could start my own business as well. I started Creativity Design Group, and we focus on web design and graphic design mainly. Just like with Junction Creative, we care about client success. We care about making sure that we have exceeded their expectations when we hand over their project to them after they spent their hard-earned money on it. That's what every business should aim to do. Keep in mind that customers are coming to you. They're spending their hard-earned dollars for services that you provide. You want to make sure that for that reason alone, they are beyond satisfied. I read your book from cover to cover, and I've seen some of the great lengths that you went through to make sure that every client was satisfied. I wish every other business owner could do the same. There aren't many people out there that do that. You could say the main reason why I left the corporate world, mainly because of the lack of honesty and the lack of respect for clients, the lack of attention towards customers' needs. And after seeing that for so long, it just kind of makes you sick to your stomach, and you kind of of want to jump in and do something. And I felt that that's what you did, Julie, because you worked for some really, really horrific people. And like I said, some of your experiences were downright nightmare inducing. And the only way to break free from that and to truly treat the customers and employees the way they deserve to be treated was for you to start your own firm. And I respect you greatly for that. That is something that not everybody has the courage to do every day.
It's true. No, and I appreciate that. And, and I'm sure much like as you started your firm, right? I think it's so incredibly important that, you never lose sight of what's important to you. I mean, you can work and I'm very grateful for the experiences that I've had throughout my career, whether there was an adverse time or whether it was a time of success, those experiences really shaped who I am and who I was as a business owner. And so it was important to me that I didn't repeat the mistakes of others or that I tried to do better where I could. And certainly from a client perspective, I think as you can probably relate, I know how hard it is to step out on my own and invest my own money into building a company. And so when our clients come to us, whether they're a small client or a large client, I still value the fact that they're investing their money with our firm and that they're trusting us to help take them to the next level. So it's something that certainly over the years, even though we've grown and we've expanded, I've just never lost sight of that. And I think that's so incredibly important in today's work environment that so many companies aren't necessarily dialed into that sentiment, but it's definitely one that I've always tried to be mindful of.
Those are some serious words to live by that every business owner and entrepreneur need to know about. They need to know that it's really important to keep your sights focused on what you're doing and never lose sight of what's ahead as well, because you never know when you're going to lose one of your biggest major clients. And I know you can relate to that well, as I read about the experience in your book. Can you believe that we lost our two biggest clients on the very last week of 2020? That was extremely heartbreaking.
Oh my goodness. I mean, the timing. Not great.
We went into 2021 almost going out of business. I mean, 2021 was the only year in our company's short history where cash outflow exceeded cash inflow. I was dead close to selling all the assets off and turning off the lights for the last time.
But you made it.
Yes.
You made it through, right?
Yes, we did. That's why we're still in business today. I'm also happy to hear that throughout all those situations that you faced where you almost lost some of your biggest accounts, that you're still able to once again make it on top. That's the most important thing. You made it out on top and you dominated. You took control of the situation.
Well, and that's it, right? I mean, I do think that success in business comes down to a couple of key things. And I believe it was Jeff Bezos actually had said this, is that, really your day is made up of decisions, right? And from the time that you wake up as a business owner until the time you log off, you're making critical business decisions, whether they're big or they're small. And, much like you experienced, 3 years into my business, we did lose our biggest client and I was faced with making up the difference. And I did do it, but it took 3 months. I didn't sleep. I worked 14 hours a day and I just stayed focused on the goal because I knew that this is what it would take to stay in business. And I think much like yourself, right? When we find ourselves in times of adversity or when we find that maybe things aren't going the way that we can, the only thing that I know how to do is to keep moving forward, right? And it sounds like you've done very much the same thing.
Yes, that's correct. I just continued to keep a forward mindset. Once 2021 was over, 2022 ended up being a much better year after we took a major loss in 2021 because a lot of people were either looking for free alternatives or cheaper alternatives to our services because COVID was in full effect at the time. Adversity comes in different forms. It's not just always toxic people. Adversity comes in situations. It comes in unfortunate events. COVID was a major adversary. Losing a client, that's a major adversary. Taking major losses like we did, that's a major adversary right there. Now that we've talked about Junction Creative Solutions and how it aims to bring client success, I want to know more about how it all began. When you started Junction Creative out of a spare bedroom in your home, what kept you disciplined and focused every day? The reason why I'm asking you this question is because I want all the aspiring entrepreneurs out there who plan on starting their own businesses, especially if they plan on working from home or operating them out of home. I want them to know, how did you do it? How did you stay disciplined and focused every day while working at home where there's all sorts of distractions?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I will tell you this, and I think for anyone that's aspiring to become a business owner or someone that's taking the leap of faith to invest in themselves, what you have to understand is that it isn't going to be the 30-second soundbite that we hear on TV or that we see on TikTok or social media. Building a business is hard and it does take work. And I know sometimes we can get disenfranchised and we think, oh my gosh, well, it seems like everybody's doing it. I can do it too. Well, it is true. We live in a great country. We have the ability to start and grow businesses every single day. But what I will tell you is that it does take focus. It does take discipline. And so when I took the leap of faith to start my business, I did. I set up an office in a spare bedroom. I had a desk. I had shelves. I had a filing system. And I legitimately would start every day by creating a list. And that list would include write the business plan, write your marketing strategy, reach out to 2 to 3 people that you know that you can call and let them know what you're doing. It was, simple things like go to the bank and open up a bank account, right? And I literally just created a list. And every time I got close to finishing that list, I added 2 or 3 more things because I never wanted to leave a day and say, oh, finish my list. I can leave early. But I simulated a work day. I started at 8. I worked until 5. I took 30 minutes for lunch during the day, just as I would if I worked for somebody else. And I really had to stay disciplined and focused. And so as soon as I shut that bedroom door to work, I was at work. And I do think that that's incredibly critical, especially in those early times that, yes, can I now multitask and do a load of laundry while I'm also, thinking through a strategy? Of course, sure I could, right? But, just because I was working from home, I didn't want to fall into a habit where I allowed myself to get distracted during the day. So I will say it was very long in the beginning because it was before I had clients. And so all I had was time to focus on building the business. But being disciplined is important. Having a list, having a plan that you're executing every single day is going to help you stay focused on moving forward.
It sounds like that I had been following your advice long before you told me about it, because that's exactly what I did too when I started my business. So I left my last company I worked for on a Friday in January of 2017. That was my last day working there. And then I had the weekend. Come Monday, it was day one of me operating CDG at home. I have a room in my home that has my supercomputer on it. In this room, I had bookshelves full of books, a lot of business related material. I have a whiteboard on the wall where I write down what I need to get done, my most important urgent tasks written in red ink. To this day, even though I have a space, I actually have a physical office address where CDG is based out of, I still do a lot of my work from home. I only go to that office when I have to meet somebody. When I'm at home, I'm doing all of my work. It's still exactly the same as if when I started. I still work in the exact same room, on the exact same desk. In fact, I'm talking to you right now on the very desk, in the very room where CDG began. I just work better from home. I work better at home. And I know that when you started, would you say that you felt pretty comfortable working at home, or was it like a mixed bag of feelings?
So I will say, when I started, obviously I was working from home. And then as I added employees, I actually had an in-law suite at my house where there were 6 of us, that worked out of that for a while. But I've had a physical office space for the last 6 years, 7 years. So we've had actually probably longer than that now. Yeah, it's actually been longer than that. But I will say this, I do love the collaborative nature of being in an office and seeing people every day. We do have a hybrid work environment where we work from home every Wednesday. We call it Work From Home Wednesday. And I actually do like those days because on those days, I do feel that I'm able to sort of really hyper focus unless there's a ton of meetings. But I actually like both. I do like the process of going into the office. I feel like it helps me sort of, change my mindset when I get there. But I'm just as productive, working at my home office as I am in the office itself.
Yes, I agree with you that it is good to work both in an office and at home. For me personally, I've always liked working at home simply because I've always had a good job of taking care of personal and business tasks together. Sometimes, when I don't have a client meeting, if I have a personal errand that I have to run that doesn't take too long, I'll just go ahead and run it and then come right back. The majority of my work I do is at home. So whenever I'm on the phone with clients or taking care of things, I'm usually at my house. But when I have to meet them, then I set up a meeting at the office, and then we meet in the conference room there and we talk. A lot of clients I've had have been happy just working with us remotely, and we've actually been doing that long before COVID ever happened.
Oh, sure. No, for sure.
I guess you could say the main reason why I like working at home is because I just tend to feel more comfortable at home. Working at the office is good because it helps a lot of us stay more hyper-focused on what's going on. time, because at home there are distractions, and I just tend to kick out the distractions myself personally. When I'm working, I just make sure to come into my room, make sure I don't have any loud TVs on or anything like that. And when I'm on the phone, everybody else in the house is mindful that I'm on the phone. They know not to disturb me until I'm done. It's important to make sure that, for those people who do plan on operating a business out of home, they know how to make sure that the environment is truly a feasible working environment. You don't want to have endless distractions or people coming and bothering you with unrelated stuff. You have clients to serve. Like I said, they're spending their hard-earned dollars at your company. You've got to make sure that they come first.
Exactly.
I've talked to you many times about toxic bosses. Well, one thing I want to say about that is you and me both relate to these experiences, because toxic bosses are one of many reasons that resulted in us both quitting our 9-to-5 jobs to start our own companies. We started to realize at that point that we wanted to be our own bosses and rule our own destiny. So what advice do you have for people who are in similar situations, who want to quit their jobs and start their own business for this very reason?
Yeah, so I would say, first and foremost, I think it's important is that I don't advocate that everyone just goes and quits their jobs because they don't like an environment. But what I will say to you is, I do think that, my background, having worked for my family's company and working in an entrepreneurial space for the, better part of my career, I do think that it showed me an opportunity that I could take advantage of. And, I don't think I could have started my company and been successful if I had just quit, after my first job or the first time that I had come across like an adverse experience. I do think that it was those experiences and those years working for other people that it really helped to define my leadership style. It helped define what I wanted to create as a business owner. So what I would say to folks is that if you are struggling in an environment, and if it is, truly a toxic work environment, then, do what you can to look at other opportunities. If you are ready to start your own business and you really are confident in your capability to not just have a great idea, but to be able to go out and sell that product or service to customers, then I would say take the leap of faith to invest in yourself. If you are, just coming out of school and you're very new to the workforce, look, the more experience that you can gain, good or bad, is only going to help contribute to the effectiveness. And so as I look back on my career, and I do talk about this in the book, I had a lot of unbelievably wonderful experiences as well when I was working for other people. And then certainly there were some instances which I hope I never have to repeat again. But all of those experiences have made me who I am today and really helped me define the type of agency that I wanted to build. And so if you still are unsure, maybe find another opportunity or another job that will give you a place to grow your skill set. And then when you feel that you're ready, when you feel like you have a product or service to offer, put a plan together and then execute that plan so that you can take that leap of faith and start your own company.
And this goes back to what we said earlier about making sure that if you really decide that you want to start a business, that you do all the homework related to it first. A business plan is a must. There's no getting around it. You've got to have a business plan, and you've got to know what it takes to run a business. You've got to know what everyday tasks are required of you, the business owner, to run a business. I know it sounds like I'm kind of repeating myself, but I'm just trying to stress to all the listeners out there that you may have a great talent out there that you want to monetize, but before you monetize it and make it into your own business, you've got to know what it takes to run a business. You've got to know what it takes to be a business owner and how to manage a business. Knowing your talent and managing a business are two different things. You've got to know what business really is before you truly start one. I'm going to be a little blunt here. I've never had one boss that I liked. Every boss that I ever worked for was awful, terrible. They were scumbags. And the biggest lesson I learned from them was how not to treat other people, how not to be disrespectful and hot-headed over the smallest of things. Also, how to treat clients to make sure their needs come first. Because like I said, I worked for a boss who always seemed like he was lying to all his employees and putting greed first ahead of client success. And that was just one of many lessons that I learned as well that prompted me into starting my own business.
Look, I was very fortunate in that, when I worked for my parents, I watched two people lead by example. They built an organization where we all felt valued and we all felt as though we were contributing to the success of the business. Not just my sister and I, but all of the employees that worked for us. And, one of our employees ended up buying the restaurant from my parents after 10 years. So, I had that as an early example. I had a boss in Philadelphia when I first got out of, college, and he took a chance on me. And you know what? He was instrumental in teaching me how to get the skills I needed to be heard when I was in a room full of business leaders and people people that had a lot more experience than I did. And like to your point, I do think that it is human nature that we will all find ourselves in environments that maybe don't reflect the values or the ideals that we want to see. And so I'm thankful that I've had both the good and the bad, because when it's good and when you've had a chance to work with people who really elevate you, I think that's incredibly important. And, as I look back on my 25-year career, I can only hope that employees and folks that have worked for me can say that as well, right? I mean, because I think I'm also aware of the fact that I'm not a perfect leader. And, look, I was learning how to be a business owner and growing my business as I was hiring employees. So I will say that I think, for anyone that's in the workforce or building a workforce of your own, is that we have to remember to be kind. And we have to remember that, we can work together and be part of something that's greater than ourselves. And so to your point, we've both been motivated by the good and the bad, right? Our intentions to create our own businesses are incredibly positive, and we're the change, right? And that's what I wanted to be. I wanted Junction Creative to be the change that I wanted to see in those environments that I was in. And, I work really hard to try to do that every single day, even on the days where I'm not so perfect.
Well, we're all humans. Nobody's perfect. I know for sure I'm not perfect. I'm far from it. I really wish that many of my past bosses I'm talking about could hear all these things you're saying right now, because you're an example. You should be setting the example for them, because they were just so toxic. I plan on doing an episode of BizCast of all about toxic bosses later on, and it'll be an episode of our sub-series Business Sins, and I will certainly be inviting you to come on to that episode for sure, because you have some experiences to share about that, which people can also learn more about as they read your book. So
exactly, yeah.
I'm not going to give away too much now, because I want people to go and buy your book. But when we get to that episode, we're going to have a lot to discuss. I mean, I'm going to have stories to share. I know you're going to have some stories to share. That is, if you feel comfortable sharing them. And overall, toxic bosses and poor leadership, poor management style, those are just a few reasons why I left my previous job. And it's also why I've decided that I never want to go back to the corporate world again, that I never want to leave CDG. CDG is the company that I spent 7 years building up. I never want to go back to working for somebody ever again. I've decided on that now. I mean, I'm a young guy, and my career experience in the field wasn't very long. Put it this way, I'm not going to drop my age, but I will say this, I'm a millennial, and the year you started Junction Creative, I was in high school. Put it that way.
Oh, wow. Now I feel old. But that's okay.
Awesome. I'm not trying to make anybody feel old here.
Oh no. Hey, I'm very proud of the 25 years that I've been in business. And honestly, I just feel grateful that I'm still in it at 45 and that I have built a company over the last 15 years. So I joke. I only joke. I know I'm not that old, but when you put it in that perspective, I'm like, okay, so I was in high school a long time ago.
Well, high school feels like a very long time ago for me too.
Well, I think more people need to learn how to communicate with other people. So, having come out of the service business and working in a restaurant, not only are you working with different people from different walks of life, that might be employees, but you're also serving people that come to you from all over. And I do think that there's a certain amount of experience that you get when you're dealing and working with different individuals. And, I will say, that in our work environment now, technology is changing how we communicate. And in some ways, it's not great, which is why, as I'm sure you read in the book, I talk about some of the processes that we put in place so that everyone is clear on how we communicate and what the expectation is when you're communicating with clients. Not everybody will understand why we've done that, but I will tell you that it comes from decades of experience working with all different kinds of people in different industries and understanding that communication in its purest form is so critical to the success or failure of business. And so, that's just one way that I strive to make things a little bit easier for our employees, for our clients, so that, we're all communicating in the right way so that we, are just mindful of each other. But, the work environment continues to change. And that's actually also part of the reason why I wanted to write Dare to Become, is I wanted to show people that it's a work in progress and that if you work hard enough and you have good intentions, you can build very impactful organizations that impact clients and employees. And so that's that's where I choose to focus on. And like I said, even though, maybe I've overcome quite a bit in my career, I look back and I'm grateful for that because it definitely has changed my perspective on how I've chosen to move forward.
And it's little experiences like that really shape who we become today, past experiences. And I remember a lot of what you wrote about when it came to communication. Communication is very, very important. Hopefully I'm not giving away too much of the book here by talking about this, but when you told the story about the one client who was threatening legal action because he didn't have his website files, I immediately was in your shoes and was able to feel that exact moment of paralyzing fear you must have had. Even though I've never experienced that myself personally, I already knew exactly how that must have felt. I had one angry client several years ago, and it was because we contracted a photographer to go to her job site to take some photos for her website we were building her. He didn't show up for the job after he had already signed the contract. So she paid, he never showed up, and then I had to chase her down to give her a refund.
Yeah, and I think like in the situations that I put in the book too, I mean, we document absolutely everything that we do at our agency. We document every email, we document every phone call, we document absolutely everything. And so in the situation, in the example I shared in the book, is that really what it came down to is the client was threatening to ruin our reputation if we didn't give them free work. They had paid for the work that we had completed. We had provided them with all of those files. We provided them with the work that we completed. But when we had said to them, hey, this is out of scope, this is a significant increase in the scope of work, his response was, well, either you do it for free or I'll have to pay somebody to do it. And my response was, well, but why should we do it for free, right? We didn't, necessarily screw up the project. We didn't do anything wrong with the project. And fortunately, because we had documented the entire process with the client, there really was no exposure from our side in terms of legal issues. But I mean, again, I think sometimes people react to things based on where they're at. And so all I could think about was, I don't really think it was the website files that was creating such, anger and frustration with this client. I think that sometimes we also have to remember that our clients are also running businesses. And so sometimes that doesn't always look so great, but that's all part of it, right? Not every client is going to walk away and say this was a home run. You'll definitely have clients that will test your patience. You'll have clients that, do want to get things without having to pay full price, especially in today's environment. But, it's just important to be consistent, to document everything from start to finish. So there's no question whether or not you've completed the work. And so, like I said, I cover that in the book. And so hopefully folks find that interesting, because I will say if there's a path of documentation and there is a path to show the step-by-step, you really shouldn't go into client relationships being afraid, especially if everything is very clear.
That's more than correct. Many people need to understand that there is a certain scope of work that is to be done, and it's outlined in writing in the contract. And if it's not in that contract, then it's not something that your firm is responsible for doing. But there are greedy, unrealistic individuals out there who will try to do what this one client of yours did to you, and that is just not right. They're trying to take advantage of you. First, they cannot expect you to do something for free, and they cannot expect you to do something that's not even in the overall work breakdown that you provided. The contract explains exactly what you're going to provide.
Yeah, I liken the experience to this, and I say this a lot when we come up against a client who maybe wants, more than what they're willing to pay, and is, look, I love designer shoes. I collect shoes. I don't collect bags, but if I want a pair of designer shoes, they might go on sale, but I can't go into a department store. I can't go into a store and say, yeah, I get that this is the price, but here's what I want to pay for it, right? Yes. Could you get a discount by signing up for a credit card? Maybe. Right. But I think just as general, like even as a customer myself, is that, people do have to charge for their services. And just because you don't want to pay for it then doesn't mean that you then should get exactly anything over and above the scope of work. So it's a bit of a delicate dance. I've definitely given away a lot of free work over the years, but there are times when I push back when it becomes significant, right? Because I shouldn't have to lose money to give, somebody something that's well above, over and above what they've paid for.
The analogy that you gave with the shoes and the store is very similar to one that I always give to clients when they start asking for discounts. I always tell them, you can't go into Best Buy, find a TV that you like for $1,000 and tell them that you're only going to pay $500 for it. They're just going to laugh at you, and they're not going to sell it to you at that price just because you asked for it. We've had clients all the time come in and ask us, can we just get it for so-and-so amount? Like one time a few years ago, I had a client. She came in, she wanted to start an e-commerce website selling clothes. close, but she only had $300 to spend. I told her, you're looking at the minimum of $1,000 or so. And then she pulls out her phone. She shows me an ad for another company in another state. And she said, this company will do all the work that I want for only $300. And I told her very respectfully, this company might be the better fit for you to work with.
If they can do it for $300 and that's what she wants to get, then we don't have to necessarily compromise our pricing because that's what she found online. So especially in our space, I think we see it a lot, especially in the digital space. People think, well, hey, GoDaddy gives it for free. Well, yeah, GoDaddy might give it to you for free, but you're going to get what you pay for. So, again, I think people just have to be educated and understand what they're getting for that price point, because like this woman that wanted it for $300, she probably wasn't going to get the same quality level of products that you were offering. So
most likely that is true, but I never heard from her again. And I was thankful of that because she was already rude from the beginning. It's usually clients who make those kind of ridiculous demands who are usually rude. They know how to nickel and dime people, but I don't allow customers to do that. The ones who value your work are the ones who will not ask for a discount. I always tell other fellow business owners, if they have to ask you for a discount, that shows that they don't view you as a serious business. They view you as here's the dreaded H word, a hobbyist.
Yeah, no, I talk about that in my book too. Someone did actually say that I was doing this as a hobby at one point, and that was like 7 or 8 years into my business. But yeah, look, people are always going to try. It's human nature. Folks want to get the best deal. I've definitely given clients for repeat work. I've given them discounts because I value them as clients. But I do think that not everyone's going to be a great fit. And that's why there are so many different companies, right? So not everybody has to work with us, but certainly it is a partnership, right? And we both have to value and respect the contributions that we're bringing to these projects. And so if they don't, then it probably is best for them to find, another agency or another firm that fits their budget. But, we can't win them all.
That's part of the circle of life as a business owner. We can't win them all. Sometimes clients will just have to shop around and find the one that meets their budget. And like you said, and I want to talk to you for a second about that portion of your book where the client said you were just doing your hobby. When I read that, my blood started boiling. I felt angry for you when I read that. I hate the word hobby because people think that when you work for yourself or when you have your own business, they think, oh, they're just doing this out of their garage. They're not serious. They're not working a 9-to-5 job. They're not serious about their career at all. They're just doing this out of their garage as a hobby. I hate it when people get that misconception that we're just doing this as a hobby. I've been doing this for 7 years now. This is not a hobby. This is my full-time work. I've been serving clients for a long time, and you have been serving your clients for a long time too. The word hobby is a very, very bad word, in the entrepreneurship world.
Well, I think in any world, right? Like in any work environment. This was a client I had for 7 years. I started with them when they had a concept for their business. I helped them grow it. I helped them staff it. We helped them market it. And ultimately, we were still at the table when they were working to sell it. And that is when, one of the partners made a comment to me that, oh, the partner said that maybe this is a hobby for you. What that was complete disrespect for the contributions that I brought to the organization. I delivered absolutely every single thing that they had said that they wanted to achieve. And I don't think that the person who made the comment understood the power of the words that he spoke. I will tell you, it was very humbling. I do question if I was a male, if he would have made that same comment. Chances are he would not have. And just because I tend to have a calm demeanor, or maybe I'm a little disarming, doesn't come from a place of weakness. It comes from a place of experience. And I have worked in environments where it is eat or be eaten. I have risen to the top of organizations by working very hard. So I understand what it takes to be successful. And that comment, while it has haunted me since he made it, I guarantee you he never thought about it after he said it. I bet he never thought of it again. But I still hear it every day that I get up, and if someone tries to knock me down, I continue to focus forward, because those are the moments that test you as an entrepreneur. Those are the moments that test you as a person. And I can tell you that while it felt incredibly awful, and I cried in the elevator as soon as the door shut. I was so immensely offended by that statement, but I did not let it slow me down. And I can move forward knowing that I did absolutely everything that I could. And, in the end, they were complimentary. We did celebrate when their company sold. They were very grateful for my contribution, but I will always remember that comment. And, it's what fuels me, right? It's what keeps me moving forward. And I certainly will never say that to somebody else. And it just keeps me mindful, right, of how I speak as well. So not a great experience, but I've learned from it.
It was those toxic experiences that we learn the biggest lessons from. Anytime someone makes a nasty remark that we find offensive, unfortunately, we never forget them. Even if we forgive that person, the experience still lives on in our mind. We never forget them. I still remember a lot of the nightmarish experiences I dealt with working for other people. I was called one time, the office manager at my last job called me a, quote, a child, just because I didn't see eye to eye with him on something and we had a disagreement. The fact that he called me a child, of course it hurt, but I stood my ground with him too. I had to defend myself at that point. I learned from all these little experiences too, not to be such a yes man like I used to be. We run into stuff like this all the time, and in a way it helps us grow, whether people insult us by calling us hobbyists or words worse than that, or they just decide they want to yell at us for the most smallest of things. It helps us grow our own character because we now observed how we are not to treat other people. We know how not to act the next time we're in a professional setting. And then, of course, we make sure to set the example for our subordinates as well.
No, for sure. I mean, I think the experience for me also taught me that, I wasn't charging them enough. I think looking back, in reality, I was very fair in my rates. I was very fair in what I charged them. And I do also think that, the comment was made obviously to sting and was not warranted for the conversation that we had just had. But, look, I mean, these situations are what make us who we are. And I'm glad that I've had those experiences because the reality of owning a business isn't all blue sky sunshine all of the time. You are going to have tough days. You are going to have people that say things to you because they're having a bad day. You are going to not get it right every single time. And so they help build character. And again, like I said, as I put it in the book, I put it in the book because, there are other people very similar to me that have gone through, much like yourself, similar situations where, you've been put in those situations. But the lesson or the moral of the story is that I kept moving forward. And yeah, it stung. And yes, it hurt my feelings. And yes, it didn't make me feel good about myself. But at the same time, I never let it stop me. And when people make comments like that, sometimes they're trying to get a reaction. Sometimes they're trying to get some type of response. And in my case, I, held my head up high and I walked forward knowing what I had done. And I just let it be fuel for the next thing that came along. So that's why I shared it.
Putting it metaphorically, you can either let people throw rocks at you and let them injure you, or you can put up a shield as they're hurling those rocks at you.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I was actually saying to a colleague just recently, because, I will say that, after 25 years in business and being in a room sometimes where I'm the only female or I'm one of, 3 female CEOs in the room, I don't call myself a feminist. I was never raised to enter the workforce as a woman. I entered the workforce as an individual. But I will say that there are still comments that are made to me. And I know that, they're biased because I am a female. But I made the comment to a colleague that's like, look, if we spend so much time focusing on those rocks and how they make us feel, we can't hear the glass breaking. And so I kind of look at it and say, look, I've accomplished my goals. I've, worked really hard to get where I'm at. And so rather than focusing on all the rocks, I'm just going to focus on the fact that, I've got 2 daughters who see their mom who's a working, CEO. I'm now an author, and I'm showing them that if they work hard enough, they can get there, not because they're a female either. Right. So I'm just trying to be the change that I want to see. And yeah, and there's good and bad that comes along with it.
Yes, I'm glad that you're setting the example for your children as well, because they too can be just like mom if they follow in her footsteps and do the right things. That's the right career path they choose growing up. In general, when people toss comments at us like that, it's important for us to really take them with a shield of armor. They can either hurt us and we allow them to bring us down, or we can just move past them and remember that we are stronger than their toxic words. I've met people who harp on the past a lot, and that's never good for success. A success-focused mindset involves looking forward. If you're always thinking about how someone's wronged you in the past, it's only going to hinder you later. And Julie, I'm glad you were able to, despite remembering all these hurtful things people have said about you, you are still able to put them past you and to move forward with a success mindset. You now have a very successful business, and it wouldn't have all been possible if it weren't for your resiliency and your brilliance. As we get ready to close out the episode, I have one final question for you, and that is, is, what is the most important piece of advice you would have for business owners who are struggling right now?
Yeah, so biggest piece of advice, I had a mentor say this to me many years ago, which is that just remember that, as a leader, you're taking that leap of faith to stand out in front, and you will always have a target on your back. So you will always be dodging darts as they're being thrown. But just remember that, when those darts are getting thrown, that you will, sidestep some of them, some you will feel, but that if you just stay focused and you continue to work hard and you continue to move forward, you will get there. And so if you are struggling, if you are looking for motivation, find a community around you, talk to other business owners who are going through the things that you're going through, because I guarantee you, even though our paths might all be different, we're all experiencing a lot of the same things.
Very well said, Julie. Those are some words to live by. It is important to have a network of friends and colleagues who can support each other through hard times, just to talk to. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to give you, their business, but I've learned over the years that just talking about the problem helps you feel better, and eventually you will find a road out of all these dark times and into one of success. With my example, 2021 was the year I thought CDG was going out of business, but come 2022, you could say the following year threw a major Uno reverse card on that whole situation.
Yes, no, agreed. Most people wouldn't make it through.
Unfortunately, most people won't make it through because they just decide they want to throw in the towel and give up. When you're resilient, you don't have that mindset. You instead think about strategy over what you're going to do next, over how you're going to plan your escape route from this period of struggling and into one of success. Sometimes it happens overnight and sometimes it doesn't, but the majority of the time, it is going to require some hard work. There are those rare cases where it does happen overnight, but it's rare. It is going to involve a lot of work on your behalf. You've got to develop a good marketing strategy. At that point, you have to realize, what are you going to do to revitalize your company and get its name back out there again? To all the business owners out there, Julie has some very wise words of advice that you need to follow. You will be successful if you listen to everything she has to say, and of course, follow the advice that's outlined in her book. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody, but for those who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs, you can do it. It just takes a lot of hard work, a lot of homework, and a lot of pre-planning. So don't just jump from your 9-to-5 job into starting your own business just like that. Make sure you have a strategic plan to get it started, so that way you have an easy transition from employment to business owner. And Julie, where can everybody find your book? Where can they go and buy it at?
Yeah, absolutely. Dare to Become from the Corner Boots to the Corner Office is available at all major e-tailers. It's also in bookstores like Barnes & Noble, Hudson News, and most of your favorite bookshops. So if you just Google Dare to Become and my name, Julie Cropp Gareleck, you'll be able to find the closest bookstore near you. You can purchase the book on my website directly at www.juliecroppgareleck.com, or for those folks who have Amazon, that's usually the best and easiest place to go. It's available there as well.
So I'll be providing a link to your website in the description on YouTube and all the other platforms that this episode will be carried on. For those of you who are interested in checking out Dare to Become, a link will be provided in the description no matter where you're listening to this episode to, whether it be on YouTube or Spotify or any of the other platforms that is carrying this episode. You can find the link in the description and you can go and purchase a copy of Dare to Become for yourself and learn some valuable advice that'll make you a better business owner or a better business executive. In general, whichever career path you're following, this book is a must read. And Julie, I thank you very much for sharing it with all of our listeners. I enjoyed your book. I hope that many other people will learn some great lessons from it. And thank you for sharing all this wonderful information on BizCast today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
And thank you for listening to the CDG BizCast. We wish you all the best. Have a great day, everyone.